En nombre del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y de los organizadores del Foco en las Américas, es un honor y un gusto poderles darles la bienvenida a la primera sesión del Foco en las Américas de la Semana Mundial del Agua 2024. Me siento como en las Olimpiadas. Mucho gusto de verlos aquí con nosotros. Mi nombre es Ana María Núñez, soy de la División de Agua y Saneamiento del sector de Infraestructura y Energía del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y tendré el honor de moderar esta sesión, durante la cual se realizarán intervenciones en ambos idiomas, español e inglés. Entonces, a los asistentes que nos acompañan aquí en la sala, les pedimos que utilicen, por favor, la aplicación Interpretify para seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. El número de la sesión es el 11881. Para nuestros participantes virtuales, pueden elegir el idioma haciendo clic en el botón correspondiente en la plataforma. El enfoque de esta sesión para la gestión sostenible de los recursos hídricos compartidos en América Latina y el Caribe, vamos a explorar casos, discutiremos desafíos y subrayaremos la importancia de fortalecer las instituciones para desarrollar marcos legales robustos y fomentar el intercambio de conocimiento en pro de la hidrodiplomacia. Para dar inicio a esta sesión, voy a darle la palabra al señor Tomás Serebrisky, es el gerente de Infraestructura y Energía del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo. Le podemos dar un pequeño aplauso.
Bueno, muchas gracias. So good afternoon to all. It's really a pleasure to welcome you all to this important session at the Stockholm International Water Institute's World Water Week 2024. It's really, for me, an honor to be here because it's the first time that I participate. And it's an honor to be with so many distinguished international experts, leaders, and stakeholders committed to the sustainable management of our shared water resources. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our colleagues who have traveled from around the world to join us here in Stockholm. Your presence underscores the vital importance of transboundary water cooperation in the Americas. So historically, rivers and bodies of water served as territorial demarcations, separating countries, regions, and other human divisions. However, water, by its very nature, flows tirelessly along its course, leaving, hopefully, a trail of development. In Latin America and the Caribbean, when we talk about water security, we are ultimately talking about food, energy, biodiversity, and competitiveness. In fact, our region has 8% of the total population and over 30% of the total freshwater resources. Just as a comparison, Asia has 60% of the population, but only 28% of fresh water resources. So this means that our economies literally run on water. We depend more directly on water resources than any other region. Our agricultural exports and our energy depend on our water resources. We are the world's leading producer and exporter of agricultural commodities, including soy, coffee, and sugar. We also get far more electricity from water than any other part of the world, nearly 60% compared to the global average of 15%. In the context of the global climate crisis, rapid urbanization, and extraction of natural resources, water security is one of the main challenges for the region's development. In this context, effective governance frameworks for the protection and coordinated management of transboundary water resources is a key aspect to ensure our water security. So let me give you a few numbers. About 70% of total superficial runoff in our region comes from transboundary basins, where 40% of the total population lives, covering 60% of the territory of the region. In South America, there are 38 transboundary basins. In Central America, that number is 29. So about 70% of the region's water resources are found in transboundary basins, including the Amazon River, the largest freshwater reserve in the world. However, 40% of our region could suffer water stress by 2050, potentially promoting migration to avoid extreme droughts and rain, increasing risks of disruption to agricultural and industrial production and hydropower generation, among other possible negative impacts. So all the challenges I just laid out align very well with the World Water Week focus on solutions, agreements, financing, and new technologies for transboundary water management in the Americas. So this year, the organizing committee of the Focus of the Americas program has identified 5 thematic axes to be explored through hybrid and open sessions. First, bridging divides. There is a new area for transboundary watershed management, exploring opportunities and challenges for strengthening regional coordination and effective transboundary water management for healthier and more resilient watersheds in the Americas. The second topic is hydro diplomacy for shared water resources, focusing on collaborative actions for sustainable water resource management, success stories, challenges, and the need for strong institutions, legal frameworks, and knowledge sharing. The third topic is sustainable financing for transboundary water cooperation, examining challenges and opportunities for resource mobilization to support cooperation in transboundary basins. The fourth is science and technology, advancing cooperation in transboundary waters with innovative strategies in transboundary watershed management, focusing on science, technology, and cooperation. And the last topic is embracing diversity, including the perspective and experience of diverse communities within transboundary areas, encouraging dialogue and collaboration. So at the Inter-American Development Bank, we are committed to support our region to develop and implement cooperation mechanisms, providing technical support for the design and management of tools and planning strategies and financing of investments whenever needed. So let's work together and maximize the economic, environmental, and social well-being, ensuring that water flow tirelessly along its course, leaving a trail of progress. So thank you for participating in the Focus on the Americas. We all hope to bring ideas and different voices to explore a better future for all through sustainable, resilient, and inclusive water and sanitation services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomás. Tomás is the first time running this marathon, so thank you for doing it so great. Next, so I remind for the participants that are joining in that this session will be both in Spanish and English, so please use the interpretation tools accordingly.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Now we have the privilege of having the participation of Dr. Antonio Nid. He is a professor of strategic law at the University of Zaragoza in Spain. He's going to talk about this key concept of your diplomacy. I'm going to just read a couple of information of his biopic. Antonio is a doctor in law, administrative law in the University of Zaragoza. He's an expert in water law. He has published over 20 books. He has run over 24 doctoral dissertation. He is an honoris causa doctor by Ford University. Dr. Antonio, thank you so much. So we would like to ask you to please stick to your assignment. Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon. I would like to greet you, everyone, to all of our attendees, speakers, and organizers. I was asked to talk about the concepts of water diplomacy and your diplomacy. These are concepts that are relatively new and that were created in the mid-90s in the past century, but we know that the core of them is describing a very old phenomenon. They're describing this water law that started in 1815 with the decree that was issued by the Vienna Congress, and that is just consecrating one of the main principles of rights to water internationally. This word diplomacy, the word diplomacy as such is related to negotiation, to exchanging information amongst the different states. through the different diplomacy professionals that are resulting in multilateral treaties or just discussions, negotiations that were never consecrated in any legal documents. So now the word diplomacy, water diplomacy, entails some innovative points about the situation. The very first one, well, we know that we have transborder waters, shallow waters, deep waters that run across different states. There's a key component to this where we see this diplomacy, which is the participation of third parties. We know that we have the participation of professionals of democracy. They're not strictly just representing state interests in water discussions, specifically transported water. They may be representatives of economic interests in water, users, NGOs, experts, universities. But what is really clear in these words, hydro diplomacy, water diplomacy, is that there is a purpose component, preventing conflict, attaining peace. We could say these are instrumental and key concepts. Concerning these concepts and its emergence, we need to highlight the value of these SDGs, specifically SDG number 6, goal number 5, implementation of integrated management of water resources at all levels, even through transborder cooperation, to really measure this attainance of this goal. We establish indicator 652 related to the surface of transborder bases subject to operational arrangements for cooperation related to water. The Latin American and the Caribbean position concerning indicator 652 as found across the different reports is a good standing, I would say. Some historic and present data. I just talked about free flow of international rivers as the origin of the principle of water diplomacy. We could say that in modern times we have established this principle to govern other uses of water different than navigation. In this domain, we have two multilateral conventions that are key, such as the Helsinki Convention in 1992, the New York Convention in 1997, and we have key multilateral aspects and conventions that are highlighting the significance of bilateral agreements as well. All of this is highlighting the fact that nowadays, whenever we think about international relations concerning transported water basins and rivers, internationally speaking, are lying in cooperation and not conflict. And we know that we had a very important conflict, which is the Arabian-Israeli conflict. We cannot forget about the Oslo agreements in 1993 and the protocol that was an annex number 3, related to the cooperation between Israel or Palestine in economic programs, development programs that established significant cooperation in this sphere. And now I would like to focus a couple of minutes on the situation in Latin America and the Caribbean. I have talked about these two multilateral conventions. It is very important to think about the situation in Latin America and the Caribbean. The New York Convention in 1997, which has not been ratified by any state in Latin America and the Caribbean, and only Panama ratified last year, in addition to the Helsinki Convention 1992, that initially was part of the Commission for Europe, but that opened in 2016 to the possibility of being ratified by other countries. This does not mean anything at all, because whenever we think about Latin America, we all usually see different bilateral treaties, or maybe involving more states to manage transported water. We need to highlight some aspects about the Treaty of Cuenca del Plata in April 1969 that convened 5 states, and that it was created after the common organization of the intergovernment committee that was managing the different countries of La Cuenca del Plata or Plata Basin based in Buenos Aires. The treaty has a very broad goal, and it focuses especially on management. And we know that currently we have 18 specific organizations in this area of the Plata Basin, which is huge. The second treaty is the Amazon Cooperation, executed in Brasilia in 1978, that convenes 7 states, and it has a very broad spectrum, and that really helps us with water management. Thirdly, we need to highlight the water agreement. It's a Warrenian agreement between Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay in 2010, which is key because it refers deep water. There are very little, a few examples of this type of international agreements addressing deep water, and we need to specify that this process of rectification is finished in 2020. And we have not yet completed the institutional process because we have not yet created the commission that consists of 4 parties that are integrated in the Warrenian Water Agreement and with the Plata Basin Treaty that has not yet appointed a commission. So I would like to address the treaty that it was executed by the Republic of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras to execute this trifect plan that does not have a specific purpose on water, but it just addresses natural resources. In the framework of this treaty, we have technical cooperation that we had in the past. We had different important agreements that are referring to water, such as the Trinational Water Agenda in 2009 and the current Master Plan 2021-2051 that is also trying to finish 2 court conflicts that have ended up in a sentence by the International Court of Justice. The first ruling that was made in 2010, it was a case between Argentina against Uruguay because of the case of Unas Pasteras in the Uruguay River. It was a much more recent ruling in 2022 by the International Court of Justice related to the conflict and the use of water where Chile was against Bolivia. And of course, this ruling initially meant that dialogue and water diplomacy failed, and inevitably we again see water diplomacy being used in the enforcement of these rulings. And before we start getting to the reflections, I would like to talk about the current conflict of the Masacre River and the Dominican Republic, where we have seen a very important intervention by the OAS on this topic at the request of both state parties. So now that we're getting to the final conclusions that are just related to how pressured we have been on doing this, I would like to highlight this centennial tradition of diplomatic relations across the different states concerning water, but also the specific point regarding hydro diplomacy, specifically, of course, addressing water, and the main standpoint highlighting the participation of third parties, states all over the country in Latin America, and which has allowed us to execute agreements to prevent any sort of conflicts. There is no question that currently we have cooperation to help us with conflict. There's a key situation regarding transborder cooperation or interstate cooperation in Latin America and the Caribbean, as seen in the different reports, successive reports, where we see that the main purpose of Indicator 652 of SDGs is also helping us highlight the worth of technical progress to improve water diplomacy. This is a key concept that I have to necessarily adhere to, such as the creation of water. We know that Professor Allen at the very beginning thought about very specific examples that could help us address this Arabian-Israeli conflict, and this is always key to highlight the significance of technical process to improve water diplomacy. And just as a last conclusion, as a key condition to move forward in this cooperation is to provide better technical, human specialized resources to the bodies responsible to manage transborder water in a domain where, in my opinion, we have great room for improvement. Thank you. Thank you so much, Antonio. We know that we have had, of course, just the opening words of a topic that could lead us to many more discussions. So thank you so much for being very brief. Before we move on to the next presentations, we would like to test the use of the Mentimeter tool. So here we would like to ask you to please help us just by getting your phones out and just scanning the QR that you see on screen. We're going to try out with the first question, and then after that, well, I can tell you that we're going to share this in our virtual chat, and we're going to be using Mentimeter. Let's test the tool. Just please write down from what country are you joining us. I think that we're going to create a good cloud. All right. So it's always impressive to see all the countries joining us today in these sessions. We would like to thank you again. Well, hopefully that these contents are just key to all of us. Now let's get into the presentation of the UN Water Convention. This is key framework to manage transborder water. Let's pass the floor to Sonia Cueppel. She is a secretary of the UNESA. Sonia is leading the UNESA team. She is a secretary on the Water Convention. She is a secretary of the Protocol on Water and Health. She has been over 23 years. She has been managing as well these conventions. She has also worked in Pneuma and Budapest and Manchester. Welcome, Sonia. And this presentation is going to be given in English.
Switch to English, we remind everybody to please use the interpretation tools available. Thank you, Sonia.
Muchas gracias por la invitación. Hablo un poco de español.
Having me, I speak just a couple of few of words and sentences. Now let's switch into English.
In English. So, we have already heard that there has been some progress in transboundary cooperation in the region, Latin America region, over the last years. For example, on Guarani, or in Trujillo, or in the Amazon, which we'll hear of. However, as we will also hear in the next presentation, still many transboundary basins do not yet have legal and institutional operational arrangements for transboundary cooperation. And that's why it is important and useful to have, at the global level, a legal and institutional framework and platform for transboundary cooperation. And the Water Convention, or Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses or International Lakes, exactly provides such a framework. It includes the key principles of international water law, so the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization, the principle of prevention of significant transboundary impact, and also cooperation principle. But most importantly, the Water Convention is a living instrument, an intergovernmental platform where the countries come together and jointly advance on transboundary cooperation. More than 130 countries worldwide take part in meetings and activities of the Water Convention. And we currently have 54 parties, including, indeed, Panama joined last year. And in total, since the global opening of the Water Convention, 13 countries have joined from outside the Pan-European region, and 20 more are in the process of joining the Water Convention, including from the region here, for example, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and some others who are discussing about it. And why are they interested? Because the Water Convention actually provides concrete technical and political support in cooperation with partners with whom we are working here, such as OAS, IADB, many basin organizations, support to interested countries to develop transboundary agreements. For example, in the Dniester, in the Senegal-Mauritanian Aquifer Basin, in Luapula, or also we worked with CCRD to help develop regional guidelines on transboundary cooperation. More than 100 transboundary agreements have actually been signed in the 30 years of existence of the Water Convention. But the Water Convention, we also help the countries to address different challenges related to transboundary cooperation. For example, on jointly adapting to climate change, or on how to identify and assess the benefits of cooperation, and also how to manage waters in an intersectoral way between the pressures from energy, food, and other sectors. and also on financing or on many other topics which are challenges for transboundary water cooperation. So joining the Water Convention can bring a number of benefits, and we will hear some of it later on from Panama. For example, it helps to bring support from the community of parties through the twinning program. Or it helps to provide access to financial and technical assistance, for example, through the upcoming matchmaking event, which will take place in October in Slovenia. It supports basin-level cooperation, but also helps to improve water management at the national level, as we could see, for example, when Senegal joined the Water Convention or Kazakhstan. And any countries which are interested can approach us as a secretariat, and we are ready to help them organize regional or national workshops like it was done in Dominican Republic, Panama, or others. At the global level, actually, the Secretary General of the United Nations is encouraging countries to join the Water Convention, or the two United Nations Water Convention, which were mentioned just before me. And we hope that in the coming years, many more countries from the region will also join. To benefit, but also to bring your experiences and good practices to the global level. And here, indeed, I just summarize how the Water Convention actually supports hydro diplomacy through the work on the ground, but also, for example, through the implementation committee, which is basically a committee countries can approach if they have problems in implementing or disputes. We also help to address emerging challenges such as dam failure, such as ecosystems, etc. And we really provide this global platform where different countries and partners can come together and increase capacity. And this, for example, will happen in just 2 months from now in Slovenia, when we will have the 10th meeting of the parties of the Water Convention, which takes place from the 23rd to 25th of October in Slovenia, with more than 600 participants from all over the world, including many ministers which have already registered. And I hope to see many of you, including from the region, from the America region, at that important, crucial event for transboundary cooperation at the global level. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Now I will switch back to Spanish for a little bit.
It's time to address the perspectives of Indicator 652 on water cooperation. We will have the participation of Julien Fabier. He is responsible for the Secretariat of the UNEC. So Julien has a career that has been focused on source to sea, and before he joined the convention, he was working OMI and also other commissions. So thank you, Julien.
Good afternoon. I will speak in English as well. Apologies for this. So this afternoon I will talk and run you through the result of the indicator 652, and I think the professor just before me did a very good introduction about this indicator, so it's good, it will save me a bit of time. So what are we talking about? Basically, as we know, we have one particular target, which is that by 2030, we implement integrated water resources management at all levels, including through transboundary cooperation, and I think that's the important word, transboundary cooperation, as appropriate. And to measure that, we have two different indicators, and the one which we will focus on this afternoon is the indicator 652, which basically, I mean, there are lots of complicated words, but basically it measures the degree of cooperation between countries through the number of operational arrangements that exist. So that's basically the idea of this indicator 652. So in other words, it's also measuring how hydro diplomacy is working between these countries. So I will really don't spend a lot of time on this, just to let you know that there is a process. The process is that every 3 years, countries share their data with UNECE and UNESCO. And from this, we develop reports, and the next report will be ready in September this year, and will focus on climate change. So just to let you know that there is a full process and organizations and countries involved behind the results of the 652 indicator. So it's not coming out of the blue, it's really countries reporting on this particular indicator. And the results we have from the last reporting round, which was basically last year, are the following. So the good news is that there is a high and a higher level of engagement. So more countries are reporting on 652. So that's good. It means that countries are involved in the process. The less good news is that the progress is not really on track to reach the target we just discussed. And so the global average value of this indicator is 59%. I mean, it doesn't say a lot as such. It's just a number, but it allows us to track this. And as you can see on the small graph, the progress that is needed to reach the 2030 target is huge. So I will skip very briefly on this, and we will focus on Latin America. But this is just a map with all the results from all regions. You can see that in regions like Europe, where the UNEC Water Convention was born, there's a long story of cooperation. So obviously it's a bit darker. So the darker the green, the more the cooperation is advanced. And just to focus and spend a bit of time on Latin America, and sorry, I'm going very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. It was very well introduced by the previous speakers. Cooperation is important because transboundary water is crucial for Latin America and the Caribbean. As you know, I mean, there are major basins, river basins, major aquifer basins as well, and we will be discussing this afternoon a bit more. So some of the key results here is, as a region, the coverage of operational arrangement is quite low, and there are quite some countries, in fact 7 countries, which provided data, and in which the area covered by operational arrangements between these countries is not even 10%. So it means that there is a lot to do. There's been a lot of progress as well. So not look at the bad side. The good side is there's been a lot of progress, and it was discussed this morning just before me as well. There have been a lot of recent developments, and we will go through them, I think, a bit more in the following presentations. But just to let you know that, yeah, the situation is improving, but there is still a long way to go. And interestingly, I mean, when you look, these 652 indicators is basically divided into 2 subparts. One is focusing on surface waters, so river and lakes, and one is focusing on groundwater. And if there is one thing to remember as well from this reporting round is that, and it's quite normal, but surface waters are much more covered by transboundary operation arrangements than groundwaters. It's also because we don't know as much as we know on surface water for groundwaters, and this is not true for Latin America and the Caribbean. This is true globally, but you can see on the map for Latin America and the Caribbean that it's very true. There are much less coverage of operational arrangements when it comes to groundwater. This is the red map. And finishing very quickly, I see, yeah, I'm off the time, but just to let you know that this process is also important, not only about the data, but it's also important as a process in itself, because we know that the process can improve cooperation, can improve hydrodiplomacy between countries. It's been the case in Latin America. We had, during this last reporting rounds, we had examples of, for example, Costa Rica and Panama working together to provide the data. We had example of Argentina and Chile also working together during the reporting round. So it means that just reporting in itself, besides providing all the data necessary for actions, is also important to improve hydrodiplomacy. So thank you very much, and sorry for being a bit over time.
Thank you very much, Julien. And now we're going to go to the section of our session that it's about case studies.
To English, let's get into a presentation of 5 case studies. 5 case studies to highlight the challenges, the opportunities of hydrodiplomacy in our region. We're going to be listening different experts. Each of them is going to have 7 minutes to share, and then we're going to have time for questions and answers for the audience from the public. So let's just get into the first presentation. It is going to be given by Mrs. Lizette Hernandez. She is joining us online. She is a executive secretary of the Tri-Party Project. She's going to be talking about the project that Antonio has already mentioned. She has over 20 years of experience, and well, we know that we're going to be addressing this process between the Guatemala and Honduras. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So now I would like to briefly address the story of this international tri-point agreement and also some other aspects that we have addressed to continue moving forward. And we're also going to be addressing the legal framework and how certain experiences become great opportunities to also just address the water agenda and all of the different partnerships that are going to help us with this aspect, such as the capacities of the different. This tri-point region is very rich. It has economies, different inhabitants, and over 5 million that benefit from all ecosystems that are being protected. It is an initiative that emerges from the peace agreements in the 80s, and where the different countries just looked for a common ground or topic for the different countries in Central America to address the topic of water conservation and peace. For many years, we addressed a pilot project. After a decade, they managed to establish a institutionalization project to work with this shared process. And we also had a constitutional agreement that was called International Treaty that has helped us just moving forward in this social economic aspect, and where water becomes this integrated access, and it has also moved forward because it is in a high water concentration region. We have this dynamic of interest from the different countries based on the services that we see from these common goals. At first, I can tell you as well that we have this reserve domination as a biosphere and a development plan that has transformed throughout the years, and also the territory has changed as well. This is a master plan that we have for all of this in 4 dimensions: social, economic, development, social aspects, the approach by the rural youth, by the indigenous peoples as well. We have governance, strengthening of all of this relationship that has been created with the different actors that are just related to work bilaterally or trinationally. We know that this journey has allowed us to create different expectations translated into joint efforts with domestic and local governments and international cooperation. At this point, the challenge is how to include the private sector in this territory so that we can foster all initiatives that have been identified as part of the master plan. So this tree has different objectives. The very first one is the conservation or preservation of natural resources. Like we mentioned before, it's not a treaty that is specifically created to address water. However, it is really valuable because it addresses water preservation, the forest, soil, biodiversity. Becomes also into a treaty that improves population conditions. It creates better opportunities to have access to health education services, and we're just joining our efforts towards a regional integration addressing common problems in their countries. And we can also see added value from this experience that could maybe harness in other regions in Latin America and in other regions in the world. The very first thing is that it has an institutional legal framework that has been passed by the first body of the state, by all 3 national congresses. It has this organizational structure that is permanent and that allows giving sustainability to all efforts that we make and that we take. And the third one, which is a platform that allows following up and strengthening our different capacities from different stakeholders, different levels, from the macro to the most community level. It allows having a high impact on national policies, regional policies that could generate higher impact at a community level. That throughout the years has allowed us to get these efforts that are empowering the community, transborder cooperation to face their common issues, the social and economic development of the population, and of course the sustainable management of all natural resources that are also found in these ecosystems. We're talking about different efforts such as restoration, integrated management of basins, biodiversity preservation, economic development of public policies, amongst many others. We have key challenges still when it comes to resource management and technological innovation to foster management processes for us to be able to have broader knowledge, such as the political stability that could lead to certain certainty in different political cycles, institutional cycles, access to financing, tax capacity that requires more and more efforts to foster high impact projects at a territory level, and also to somehow be supplemented with the public sector, private sector, to still face the different challenges that we have in the territory, and to keep on strengthening governance and transborder cooperation based on our specific interests that could exist in the national policies and the efforts required to create all of that transborder cooperation. Lastly, I would like to share with you that this treaty is not specific to address water management, like we mentioned. However, it is a mechanism that allows joint work from three governments to develop a common territory. It defines the structure that gives us the technical legal capacity to serve and work internationally with sovereignty, and the states provided to this international commission of this tri-point plan to address the issues that we have found in this territory without harming the policies that have been established in each country, their own laws and legislation that are just establishing all of these national links between the national and local government and the stakeholders in the territory. So again, water as the key driver of the joint agenda allows us to have a comprehensive approach of the management of water resources. This institutional framework allows the interaction of all three states when it comes to managing potential social, environmental, economic conflicts, and even other binding topics that allow just doing a conciliating management of this framework in consideration of the principles of reciprocity. So thank you so much for your kind attention, and I'll be here waiting for any kind of question or comment that you may have. Thank you so much, Lisette. A big round of applause for this presentation. We will have the time for a Q&A session later on. So please, we would like to ask you to just share them on the chat box. Now we're going to have a presentation by the OAS, which is our sister organization. We have Mr. Sanchez, who is responsible for water resources in the Americas. He's going to be addressing the Massacre River in the Dominican Republic. So we have Andres, we have the candidate as well, and he's also responsible for what we're doing. We have another aspects. We have shared waters in Latin America and the Caribbean. Andres, welcome. Thank you so much, Ana Maria. Thank you to all of the colleagues that are part of this session. So since we do not have the time to address many more things, I'm going to try to just share some key points with you so that you can learn a little bit more about the purpose of this presentation. So we were asked to just give you some sort of a feeling of what has to do with water diplomacy. So I really wanted to just share with all of this with you, and I wanted to just share this with you. We do not have any just history that is more important than water as well. Water is just top of everything, not only in terms of water participation, schools, and when it comes to just developing a society. Well, whenever we have a conflict, everyone loses. We're saying that everyone just loses sooner or later. So as we say in Colombia, well, the worst fight is the one that you do not have. Third, we're not just addressing conflicts in water. We have disputes that have to do with transborder basins. These have a broader approach. This has benefits and losses in different topics when it comes to controlled consumption, migration, global climate change, and many more things. A third key aspect is that ecosystems are key for management stability and for countries' development, and also from Latin America and the Caribbean, the continent, where we see a huge ecologic structure consisting of 30 or 40 ecosystems that do not care about borders, and if we do not manage this properly with diplomacy, eventually we're going to suffer. And we are the ones who survive with these ecosystems. I think that we already addressed everything that has to do with borders, right, as Thomas mentioned. So the first one, as Antonio mentioned, this is a modern globalized world like the one that we have today, where we have technologies and everything has come across borders, leads us to having connectivity, and we need to just really get adapted to the different regional systems, state systems, so that they can also have this dynamic that is found in this technology as well.
With this, then I will tell you a little bit about what is this the Jabon River talking about, because with these three things, we can have a mission that complied with its mission, and the countries are going to be able to continue the conversations for this. So between Dominican Republic and Haiti, there's an island. Well, it is an island that is shared. The barrier is by two great waters. Then we cannot see the pointer, but from the frontier in the lower part, there's the basin of Ajao Masake. So the dispute that we can we had, is with this Dejavon River, that of what IT wanted to do for the water recovery, because they have a river district that is very important for them, and it's fundamental. And the spectrum, and that's why we place this slide instead of the traceability of the channel. It cannot be of the canal specifically. It cannot be different from an island that it has this important division, right, of the barrier of the frontier that I told you. Two parts that are important: the basin that has the amount of water, and the water system that has this shared, and they're strategical for you, for Haiti and for the Dominican Republic. So our focus, when the controversy arose, to how to make the countries aware that it is an issue of cooperation, of being with each other, right, and to be together until the eternity. First, because they are an island, and because every water supply is shared, and development of both countries depends on each other. So in terms of the controversy, well, we always were with the idea of telling them that we had to have an advisory, and we had to have all of the information that was specific within everything that involved, well, all of this dispute, and the idea of getting to know the water resources, right, that it was stronger enough, and the investment in the development within all of the sectors of the border. So what we did here was to have an advisory group, huge, because I'm 38 years old, and imagine how amazing they were. But we had a group of great advisors: Jesus Antonio, Sergio, many of them, that gave us all of the specific perspectives that we had. And we were able to identify values and specific ideas in the dispute. We made an idea or training of water engineering to be able to understand all of this and to give them the idea that they can have the conversation. It is something for them. We guaranteed a safe space for them. And through the organization, we created a space for the chancellors to gather with their teams and to be able to have an agreement. Um, an agreement within what they are going to be doing and what the countries are going to agree, and to invite the partners that they consider that they need to be with them in this process, right? The IDB, the UNICE, all of those, in an idea of having a very specific uh, point of view, right? There's information that I cannot share, but what I was telling you and the idea of the negotiation and making it easier or making the people talk, it's that. Sometimes we do not specifically know, but in all of my interventions, sometimes to place the countries to talk about football makes them not to be in agreement, right? That is the same in the world. That is an agreement. That's when it's going to give the world an understanding to be able to isolate all of these things. So now what we're trying to do is to make strategic alliances. For example, with the IDB, we're working a lot to try to see how we can find a model in the cross-border functionality, and to show the countries that what we're doing is true, right? So that they start buying the attention. The development of the countries is in the borders, and we need the borders to have an understanding policy. And socially, it is a strategic point of view, and the multilaterals are the ones that have specifically that space to be able to do it. So thank you so much for your time. I do not have any more time, but I hope that the 4 points were understand you were able to understand the 4 points that are so important. Thank you, Andres. Now we have Alberto Manganelli, who's going to talk about the situation of the Guarani aquifer, and he's the director of Sergase in Uruguay. It's a category 2 place with hydrogeology. He has been working as a consultant for many international agencies and has been professor of the Uruguay University. Alberto, welcome. Welcome here. Welcome, all of you. Good morning, and thank you so much for the organization to inviting me to participate today. We will be talking about the aquifer system as a diplomacy in the Latin American situation, and a difference of what Andres just said. All of the different events or situations that we have had in this place, it has been in absence of conflict. It has been preventive. This is located in the center east place of Latin America, and it is in territories of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, with an extension approximately of 1,087,000 square kilometers. So why is it necessary? Cooperation, shared management, or hydro diplomacy? Well, basically, as we placed here a figure where we see a border mark. On the right side, we see Brazil. On the other side, we see Uruguay. And with no type of border or obstacle, we have the Guarani aquifer system. This is a very strong image to identify the needs of this situation. So what is the context for the hydro diplomacy in the Guarani aquifer system? As you know, the underwater has a very low flow of velocity. That's why a person in an aquifer has to be considered locally, right? But normally it's through projects on regional reach that reduces the elements of cooperation, knowledge, institutionalization, um, transfer of good practices that are then transferred to that local level. That is not able to take it forward if it's not together with actions that contemplate diplomacy between countries to generate the necessary process for the development of common needs that on a certain way have a or make a good relationship, right? In a formal point of view, I cannot tell in local transactions that do not have importance in the links in the countries, but generally to be able to reflect those links on a normal way, it's the chancellor who has to negotiate those links that are translated normally through agreements or treaties. Now, considering this Guarani aquifer system, here we see this timeline. Those specific sites have required diplomacy actions to be able to get to where we are today. Previously to 2000, there were developed actions that were isolated and fundamentally through academic studies, and they started showing the importance of the system. Nevertheless, there were no actions, diplomatic actions between the countries. It was then after 2000, from 2000 to 2003, that it was a negotiation of the four countries, a project that was presented to GREF for its negotiation. This project was approved and it was executed between 2003 and 2009 with the name of Project of the Environment Protection and Sustainable Development of the Guarani Aquifer System. This had a global importance and allowed the governments to consider an agreement for 2010. Afterwards, when this process finished and the agreement was signed, there was a slowdown in transboundary cooperation that were considered with the national actions. So it was in 2017 that then they started once again to negotiate with the countries the new project, which was approved at the end of 2019. Meanwhile, in 2018, the countries finalized the ratification of the process, and it was in 2020 when the Guarani Agreement enters into force. Well, then currently we have not established the regulations to call them on a certain way for it to operate. The countries are right now on the way of approval for this agreement, what will allow to be able to start the agreement. At the end of the day, after in 2022, after the pandemic, the execution of the new project mentioned started, which is going to end on December of this year, and has allowed on a one way to put movement, the structural the structures, the functional structures within the country, and to make new actions in together. This has a bridge. This is a project that is a bridge project that will be able to be developed in the following years. Clearly, this new project will have a framework that is completely different to the previous ones, because when it enters into force, this agreement, the development has to consider and has to be like a subsidy of the application of this agreement. Even the same governance of the project can be different to what today has been maintained similarly since the first project. Considering in the management place, it will be considered for the first place. Basically and quickly, this was the example that we wanted to show you about the Guarani aquifer system. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alberto. Let's continue in South America, and now we will go to the Amazonas. Maria Apostolova, who's gonna give us a vision of the Amazonic Slob is gonna tell us a little bit about. She is a coordinator of OLCA, where she's presenting the program of water resources. She has more than 20 years of experience in Latin America, has worked in OEMA, IMA, and Benelux. Thank you, Maria, for being here with us today. Thank you so much. Let's continue with the slides. So, in the Mentimeter, we have a very good question to start. Considering and saying good morning, everyone, and thank you for everyone that is virtually with us today. The question then is, in what country is the Amazon River born? Very well. Then we can continue. The Amazon River is born in Peru, but for the water and the weather, there's no barriers. And in this sense, it is relevant, a regional lookout to the basin. As you know, the Amazonic basin is huge. It covers more than 6 million square kilometers. It is extended through 8 countries. It has the tropical forest that is the biggest of the world, and it also has the water system, hydric system, and that has 20% of the liquid water of the world. The regional cooperation and the interchange of information, the 8 countries have signed the Amazonic treaty and then they generated the Amazonic treaty, who has its decision maker organization is the foreign relationship ministers that makes these channels that are political and technical for hydro diplomacy and the diplomacy within the Amazon. This regional process is dynamic and it continues evolving through what we call soft law, including different mandates given by the countries through ministerial decisions and declarations. And in the Belen meeting, the presidents of the 8 countries had a new idea for the Amazonic process, and considering the social, regional, environmental, and safety considerations, and strengthening the institutionality for the regional cooperation. To be able to implement the agenda that is multi-thematic and multi-dimensional and multi-level of the OTCA, the first challenge is to have a vision, systemic vision of the Amazon. And in this sense, the organization has had different ideas regionally, and I wanted to have the analysis of 9 priority identification topics that are very important in the Atlas of Hydroclimate Vulnerability that was published in 2021, and that provides a tool for planning oriented to improve the strategies for adaptation to the climate change. Another idea is the framework of what is going to happen with water in the Amazonic basin, published in 2022, and considering the environmental topics with the well-being of the population. Then we had a conversation with the IDB and with the CEPAL, and we had a study about the social and economical gaps of what is available for the different people. And we will be starting with another initiative that will be able to make us make it possible to continue with the IDB and the PNUMA and with all of um, the with a lot of expectations of with this initiative. So the idea in the Water Regional Cooperation is a strategic program that was developed through a project, a pilot project with the Tenoma. This document was created after a participative process with the 8 countries, followed by the diplomatic process regionally. This has been implemented through different initiatives or projects and in cooperation with partners as JET, NUMA, IDB, and the Brazil Water Agency, ABC Brazil, and others. And within the main projects, there's the project of Amazonic Basin, the implementation of the PI, that it is based in the implementation of the 3 great strategic lines that are the strengthening of the national governance and regional governance for water management facing the climate change, monitoring for decision making with a perspective of facing water. Thank you to the collaborative and cooperation spaces established throughout these years. These Amazonic countries have an important step in the process of building a regional governance that is innovative for water management. In this sense, in August of 2023, the authorities of water of the 8 countries agree in the importance of creating a permanent mechanism of collaboration and cooperation for the change in consideration of water resources and created the permanent water cooperation with the OTC. This received support in the highest level of the presidency, the framework of the President Declaration of Belen, and through the resolution of the ministers of foreign affairs. It started in April of this network in April of 2024. It has a plan, a working plan that is consolidated. Another idea for the Amazon is to have important and relatable data to be able to continue. So we are working to establish an integrated monitoring in regional system of environmental monitoring of water within the Amazon Regional Observatory. You can see on the screen that we have established an hydrologic network in the Amazon and a quality monitoring network, and also the consideration of hydric resources with the cooperation of the South-South with all of the consideration of water um, creation. And we are considering many countries, and we are also having all of the different people that are connected with the different networks. These 4 protocols were generated and are being used by the technical panel of the RADA for the adoption by the member countries. Quickly, I wanted also to show you an example of the hydro diplomacy in the local trans-border idea. In the regional countries of Tequisia and Lavatecia that are in the border with Brazil have in Colombia have an initiative, national initiative, that is very important to understand the use of underwater in the conservation and quality of the sources of underwater. And based on the results, we created these important considerations with a system of monitoring, and also to consider within the system an integrated system that is basic within the border, within the sanitation system. And we have an important space in institutional mechanisms for the cooperation that is multi-level in the Amazon, and also an integrated vision that is regional, and the possibility of a collective action that is fundamental to consider all of the challenges that are common, with the purpose of ensuring the human right to water, to contribute stability and peace, and to avoid that the Amazon will get to a point of no return. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria, for all of the information. For who is interested, we will have a conversation on detail with Edith Paredes, that is the executive director of the OCTA, in 1 hour and a half upstairs, a live talk show. Now we will have past this Central American consideration, that we have the person from Panama, from the Ministry of Water in Costa Rica. And if you can give me 1 minute, Yarid is the the person that is in charge of management of water in basins between Panama and Costa Rica. That is one of the focal points of the Convention for Water. Thank you so much for being here with us, and she's the chair. Thank you so much. If you allow me to share my screen. Good morning, everyone from Panama. It is 8:10. My presentation is in English, but to make sure that we can get on a good communication, I'm gonna do this in Spanish, and I'm gonna give this to the translators. Let me share a little bit about the experience of the hydro diplomacy, managing shared water resources now in the case of Sixaola watershed experience. In starting with the hydro diplomacy with all of the countries, we established the agreement, Panama Costa Rica border development, that it not only talks about water but all of the border development between Panama and Costa Rica. But after years of this signing this agreement, we developed the first project, that is a project that is about the integrated mission of the ecosystems in this Sixaola watershed that creates the national integration. This that was created between Panama and Costa Rica are looking for to have an equitable distribution of water for both countries on a balanced way. And this binational agreement has actors in both parts of the countries. An example of this cooperation and between what we can say through this hydro diplomacy is the trans-border analysis that was the result of other projects that we currently have, thanks to the integration, where we sat in a working table in between those countries, in institutions and community representatives that are the ones that can tell us what are the specific needs that the basin has, and that we can establish a route where we identify projects, we identify the cost chain, and we could identify what are the problems that we can solve in the short term. This was given in September of 2022, and it has been a continuous work that we are still working, because we are able to also get the CEPAL, that is the strategic action program that has specific actions for each country. And according to the regional challenge that many have mentioned, Panama had this interest in being part of the Water Convention through a workshop that was created where in May of 2022 we had the fourth regional trans-border water workshop where we had the secretary of the agreement and where we knew where we could have or raise this interest to get it to our ministers, to our bosses, and then they could show it to the chancellors and to the assembly that it was a process that was short for us. It was only 1 year, and maybe you will be able to get to know it. But for us, as a first person said, Latin America is not going to start doing work together with shared water. But this platform of the water agreement allows us not only to get to know what we're doing in this meeting, but also allows us to get to know experiences that give information to solve one or another situation that maybe have not been presenting right now, but countries like us, Panama, Costa Rica, have great relationships, but to be able to be prepared to for any need or any eventuality that is done on the local idea or how it is managed. How is this managed? So we made a workshop. This is the people that participated within this workshop. The ones that presented what are the advantages and the knowledge that we have been able to get as the cross-border waters with other countries and other continents. Panama also is a focus of a possible financing of projects, being part of this platform because on the global level is expressing a commitment with the conservation and the good management and collaboration with cross-border waters. Here, I mentioned that the hydro diplomacy is gonna strengthen and be able to give stability in cooperation, not only national but also regional. In Panama, well, we have offered and we have been felt honored to be able to share the experience with other countries, with Uruguay virtually and Costa Rica in presence. And well, it is not only a vision that is going to give the country directly financing, because every country is going to self manage the financing, uh, being a platform of receiving acknowledgement and also giving the acknowledgement that is going to be created and to strengthen those links, those contacts for projects, further projects that give benefit to our countries and to our region. This is the case of a joint management that we have with Costa Rica. For us, as small as it seems, it's a great achievement. It's the first year that we sit in the table with Costa Rica to make this exercise together. Obviously, every country delivered personally, but as we share basins, we have common data to have to verify. This was very important to start within Panama to verify the data that was not that clear and the Costa Rica point of view, to see a management of how Panama with the committees is managing this, but most of all to be able to establish joint actions in other watersheds, not only in Costa Rica, because at the end of the day in Panama we have all of the border, that we have all of the watersheds that are in those regions. So in that meeting, it was maybe a year and a half, and we have been establishing meetings virtually to be able to start and plan a project that we have of the Myanmar basin that we will share and present soon, and to start strengthening management by national management of the borders. And at the end of the day, we had the meeting of what I mentioned of the agreements of the results of the meeting. One of those were that what we have of the map of the basin of where we are focusing with Chiriquí Viejo and Vecino that are the part in Panama. But also we have shared space with that basin in Costa Rica to be able to get to the maps of the entire basin. Everyone, they have their own watershed, but in agreement with our geographicals to establish a joint map to know what are the needs of the watershed and to have specific needs considered. At the end of in June, we had this geographical study, and for August, we started reviewing the project. We had to review the project profile, and is what we're doing between the two institutions. The achievements or the routes that we have in hydro diplomacy in Panama, well, an experience that is good in the management of cross-border watersheds in Costa Rica and Panama is something that we have had since this agreement was signed of recovery in Panama. We did it in 1994, but before that, even that, we had a good relationship, and we can communicate with this binational commission through these meetings that we have had, and we do not have to have this formal communication to be able to share this exercise for the creation of what we have, the SDG with cross-border waters. Well, it's very important, and it's something that we are going to maintain as a custom, because we can verify data, we can give data, and we receive data that maybe we did not have in Panama. Well, as third point, is the first country in Latin America to be part of the Water Convention. As we said, we have been in Latin America having different agreements between 2, 3, 4 countries. And for us, it's very important that the region is part of this global platform, and to be able to not only receive information, but also we can hear the voices and explain and share the experiences that we have. Also, we're preparing the project profile from the sources to the sea in the transboundary waters. We are going to be part of the convention, being the first meeting that Panama is going to have, and we can be the first one to give to present this project, and we can generate actions or continue with actions with Costa Rica. That is everything that I had to show you today. We have a good experience, and truly we are very happy to be able to be part of a binational commission with Costa Rica, and to be part of the Water Convention, to allow us to strengthen and to say it globally, the commitment that Panama has for the conservation of water and hydro diplomacy within our countries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yarid. So now let's go to the last presentation of our session for today. I'm going to invite Maria Wynn to share the final reflections of all of what we had. Maria is the senior fellow of the University of Bonn, is president of the Committee of Associations of Water of AIRA. She was previously part of Councils of Administration of Taiko, and has participated in different international conventions. She has a magna cum laude, and she's the author of many, many articles. Maria, welcome. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the invitation to give the final ideas for the importance of hydro diplomacy, of the hydric management shared efforts. We have heard, first of all, a great tool, the Convention of the United Nations, that give us the floor to speak about different trinational, binational, and more important actors and relationships. These declarations relevate the functional and shared importance, and also the use of a balanced use of water, and not to cause damage within the cooperation. That is very important, to use this hydric shared water management. And also we speak about to guarantee the 5.6.2 SDG, that is very important for all of us, and with it we'll not be able to achieve the rest of the SDGs, like combating the climate change, eradicating poverty and hunger, having energy, degradable energy. And we have heard in Latin America, and in this session, we have heard many good conversations that are from a very legal international framework that enables a good result and shared benefit for the population, as it is the case of the 3 point within the cooperation of the countries that strengthen the institutions of water, the systems of information of the territory, and that make this national framework, and this cooperation has great value, showing the progress of biodiversity regionally and having the social and governance strengthening of capabilities of the actors and working with an integrated focus, being the water the element, the impulsive element of the agenda between the countries. They also have on Massacre and the river, the Jabon River, and the Dominican Republic situation to contemplate a vision has contemplated possibilities with the mediating or an intergovernmental organisms, in this case the General Secretariat of the Organization of the American States. And in this context, it highlights that the diplomacy of water is driven through treaties or legal frameworks and through scientific evidence that is robust for the decision making, the cooperation, the development, and peace. The agreement of the Guarani aquifer was the first one, and it is the one that has a cooperation project that has a goal to give the basis for the great prospection of the aquifer, and the state part the part the state parties are also considered in all of their different resources, and in the same way the coordination that is harmonic between the Sexaola watershed and the cooperation, that is so important to identify and connect watersheds and ecosystems for an integrated management that promote development that is cross-border through the agreement between the countries. And last but not least, the actions of the organizations, the Treaty of Amazonic Cooperation in the watershed of Amazon, give the basis for the cooperation on multi-level for strengthening of the institutional frameworks and the capability that is technical, nationally, cross-border with studies with a lookout of a watershed, creating frameworks, trainings, and monitoring networks that strengthen the data and information networks that are necessary for working for shared and joint plans and having an integrated vision for local, regional, and global uh, programs. All of these actions are actions that are advancing in a positive on the integrated and sustainable and equitable usage of these water resources, and has as a great impact not only for this region but also for the entire world. Within the basis of the principles of usage of cross-border water, we have to continue strengthening the links of cooperation, because if the case of a natural resource of water is going to be harder to satisfy the growing needs that are driven from these resources. With this end, we have to focus a balance between, from one side, to satisfy the different needs of these hydric resources that are driven from different country sectors, agriculture, civil society, companies, and on the other way to ensure sustainability of the ecosystems that from which our life depends on. To work with this holistic vision makes us more resilient to the impacts of climate change. And let's remember that our shared resources do not know limits and frontiers. That's why we speak about a hydro diplomacy, because we have to work together if we want to make sure to make the sustainable usage of the resources. And when we present the challenges, we have to work in the lookout for alliances, considering all of the different sectors. And let's remember the key: when more than one country is involved, is the international cooperation, with which it is necessary to create a regional integration to take advantage rationally and sustainably the resources that we share. Only working all of those together for the management that is optimum and efficient of our resources, we will be able to get the benefits that are needed for all of us, for today and for our future generations. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. With this, we can conclude the session, this first session of the Focus of Americas. We want to thank all of the participants present in presence and virtually, and all of the speakers for their experiences and to be able to share with us. We will see you for the Focus of the Americas program. And as we told you, we have the live talk show in the upper floor, and we will leave now the QR code with the survey of the session for you to be able to answer it, and it gives us a lot of information to create the following sessions, and we will be sharing it through your email. Thank you so much.